Okay, hello everyone, Victor Momo from Excel Moments with a continuation of the solution series to Excel BI's LinkedIn challenges. And like I've said in previous videos, if you're not following the Excel BI LinkedIn page, you should if you want to boost your Excel formula game. This is challenge 536. Okay, so let's look at the problem. It says put values in a 5 by 5 grid as per their rows and column positions. The answer should have first row and first column of numbers 1 to 5. Okay, doesn't seem like the easiest thing to understand, but well, let's look at the result here. This is the result, this is what we are trying to create. Okay, so it's like this is the data, this is the source data, and then you need to fit them into this grid. Even though it says it's a 5 by 5 grid, it's actually a 6 by 6 grid, right? Because of this guy here. So here, if you go this way, that's 6. Here, if you go here, it's 6. Okay, so it's actually a 6 by 6 that you're trying to generate. And what you're now doing is you're trying to fit these values into, the cells where they, should be, which is just the intersection of the row and the column number. So if you see 1 and 3, that is A, right? So A should be in 1 and 3. Okay, that's 1. But you also notice that 1 and 3 here is also D. So it means A and D should be in that cell, which is why we have A, comma, space D. Okay, so and that's the same thing you do for the others. So when I think of creating a multi-column, multi-row array like this, I typically think of two functions: make array and reduce. Right? Reduce I have used a lot of times to solve a lot of complex problems, but make array lends itself to I would say easily getting you the array depending on the situation. So it's just to know that, okay, these are two things you can pull from, right? But depending on the situation, I can choose to go one way or the other. There's another video I will do to solve it in a totally different way, but for this one, I'll focus on using make array. Okay, let me show you how make array works. It's simple. It's really to make an array. Okay, and ask you how many rows and how many columns. You know that this is a 6 by 6, right? Even though we need values 1 to 5, 1 to 5. So this is going to be 6, 6. Okay, then you need two variables. The variables help you keep track of, what row you're on and what column you're on. So R here will be, a row variable. I mean, you can use any variable names. I just use R and C for ease. Okay, so R is going to have values from 1 to the number of rows, which is 6. C is going to have values from 1 to the number of columns, which is 6. Now, after you have that, the next thing you want to do is, okay, what should appear in the grid? In those 6 by 6, what should I see there? You can do any calculation. It can be anything. If you write down and say, in there, I want to see the number 10, what you're going to see is that you're going to see a grid that just has 10 all the way. That's what it is. Okay, so you can expand, these two if you want to see it. So that's what it is. Okay, but if you don't like that and you say, well, I want to do a calculation that involves maybe the row and the column, which is like a multiplication table as we used to call it in elementary school, you could have something like this: R times C, that in every cell, show me the row multiplied by the column number. Okay, right? So if you see this 6 now, this is like a 2 multiplied by 3. This is like a 2 multiplied by 4. Okay, so that's one. You could also say, oh no, I want to see the row and the column number, maybe separated by an underscore. So I can say R and underscore and C, something like this. Okay, even though it doesn't look very neat, but so in every cell you can see that this is row 3, column 3, this is row 5, column 5, and so on. My point here is to say that you can do anything here. Sorry, I need to come back here. My point here is that you can do anything in this. Okay, so that's just the calculation, and that's what you see on the grid. Okay, so that's good. So now let's look at the problem we have at hand specifically. There are a few things that we need to address. One is that the first cell here, which is when the row is 1 and the column is 1, that's this cell. The value is blank. Okay, now that's one thing. The next thing you see is that everybody is offset by 1. Why did I say that? You see the value of 1 here, but in the grid, this is the second column, right? The second column has a value of 1. The third column has a value of 2. The fourth column has a value of 3. So it means that everybody is like its actual column minus 1. Now the same thing happens with the rows. this is your row 1 actually. This is row 1, this is row 2, this is row 3. But you can see that row 2 has a value of 1, row 3 has a value of 2. So it means that, you are dealing with row numbers minus 1. Okay? So it means that for this, your R and C that you've defined, to really get it to work, you need to be doing what? R minus 1, C minus 1. Okay, so let's try and fix those portions first before we now look at the real calculation that we're interested in. I can use an if function and say the first thing is when R is 1 and C is 1, I want it to be blank. I can say and R is 1, C is 1. When this happens, which is my logical test, my value should be blank. Okay, so which will give this blank cell here. But again, if R is 1 and C is 1, you can easily also say R times C equals to 1, because there are no other two combinations of R and C that will give you 1 here, right? It's only 1 and 1. So I can also say, instead of this, I can say R times C equals to 1. So if R times C equals to 1, make it blank. Okay, that's the first thing. Now the next one is that if I'm on the first row, which is this first row, that means if R equals to 1, what should happen? It means that every value of C here should be C minus 1. What does that mean? If R is 1, this is column 2, which is my C should be C minus 1, so that I can get this one. This one is 4 here, but this is column 5. It should be C minus 1, 5 minus 1 to get 4. So anywhere I'm on the first row, I need to have C minus 1. Okay, that's the next thing. Now, anytime I'm in the first column, which is when what? C itself now is equals to 1. What should I do? My row is not my row because everything is offset by 1. My row should be what? R minus 1. So those are the 3 key things. Okay, then let's try and finish it off and say, if it's true, just show me the value of 10. This is just to kind of wrap it up. Okay, so as you can see, now we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we now have, just 10s everywhere. So this 10 obviously is where we now need to focus our attention on to be able to get what we have here. Now the question is, how do we get what we have here? Different people can approach it in different ways. But how I think about it is, for me to get this cell value here, it's like I can come in, into my table and filter my table to that row and that column number. So what do I mean? I can come in here and say filter these values, because those are the things that will go in to the grid. Where what? Let me say I'm testing for this one now, this AD, which is 1 and 3, where this is equals to 1 and what? This is equals to 3. So I only want to see values where my row is 1, my column is 3. Okay, and it shows me that there are 2 of them, A and D, and you right click and see them, 1 and 3 and 1 and 3. So that's A and D. So once I have A and D now, I can say, okay, yeah, I want to concatenate them, which is like an array to text, which uses a default comma space delimiter. Okay, and it gives me AD, and that's how this value comes about. And that's the same logic for every other cell in that grid. Okay, so that's really what you're trying to do. You want to filter this value based on the row and column and then fit it into that cell, which is at the intersection of that row and column. The only tricky thing in our case is because the row and columns are a little offset, the R minus 1, C minus 1. That's the only thing that's changing. Otherwise, we kind of have it solved. Okay, so let me come back here. So instead of doing 10 now, let me deal with this 10. So I can just turn this 10 into that my filter expression and say filter this. That's how I've chosen to do it. My first condition is where, my row, normally my row in this case I should be equating it to R, but you know that everything is offset by 1, so I shouldn't be equating it to R. I should be equating it to what? R minus 1. Okay, right? Because if you see as in row 5, it would actually be not on 5, based on what we have here, because everything shifts by 1. Okay, so we do R minus 1. So that's that one. And then the next condition is that what? The column is actually equals to what? C minus 1. Okay, so let's see if we are almost done here. Okay, so that's the criteria. And then if it is empty, meaning that if you filter and you don't get anything, like these cells here that are blank, it obviously means that there's no combination here that suits it. You want to put a blank. Okay, that's that. Now, once you have all that, the filter is going to do that calculation, and then you want to use array to text, which is like your text join, you know, to glue the values it returns together, separate it with a comma space. So close this, close a red bracket, one more, we are good, and do enter. Okay, and then, you know, you have something that looks like it. Let's see if we are fine by testing if this is equals to all this. Okay, just expand this to see if we have truths. Okay, so we have truths everywhere, and you know, that's basically what we need. So that's one way to get it done. So I hope you kind of got some ideas of, you know, the MAKEARRAY function. The MAKEARRAY function is easy. The complexity is about what we are doing in here, right? Which sometimes is complex, sometimes is not, right? So MAKEARRAY by itself is not a complex function. It's just create this number of rows and columns for me, and this should be the basis of populating the grid. That's really what MAKEARRAY does. But depending on the situation, it may, you know, or may not be as simple as that. So I hope, you know, you really enjoyed watching this and you've learned, you know, some things about the MAKEARRAY, and well, maybe sometimes how I think about this, and others also think about it as well, you know. And if you really did enjoy the video, you know, please make sure you hit the like button. Other people, you know, we get to see it. YouTube would, of course, recommend it more, you know, and also, you know, subscribe as well. I would really appreciate that. For now, I'm out.